Okay, why don't we get started? My name's Erin O'Shea. I'm president of Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and I'd just like to welcome all of you here. We're really, really delighted to be hosting this meeting. I'll say, and I'll say it again, that HHMI is very committed to helping to catalyze positive change in scientific publishing and to help create a system that even better serves science and scientists. I want to thank a bunch of people who are really responsible for the meeting. First, Jessica Polka and Ron Vale from ASAP Bio. Thank you. Thanks. Robert Kiley from Wellcome. And then from HHMI, Boyana Conforti, Caitlin Shrine, Catherine Brown, Christabel Salmon, and Bodo Stern. So thanks to all of those that I just mentioned, without whom this meeting wouldn't really be possible. So I will stop there and turn it over to Ron Vale.
Well, thanks, Erin. This is exciting. On behalf of the organizing committee, maybe we can have the first slide, please. From ASAP Bio, HHMI, and Wellcome Trust, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for traveling here to be with us. We're holding this meeting at HHMI in the US, but I do want to stress that all the issues that we're going to be discussing are global in nature. And I do want to especially thank the individuals who have traveled a great distance from Europe and from Asia to be with us today. And I'm not sure how to advance these slides. Maybe this thing? No? Oh, wait, no, it's this thing, sorry. And just to echo Erin's acknowledgements, I think there are two people in particular that really need to be recognized. They did a lion's share of the work here organizing this meeting, and a recently taken photograph of the two together, Jessica Polka, who's the executive director of ASAP Bio, and Christabel Salmon, who does all the events and organization here and always does an amazing job and makes us all feel very welcome here. So I'd like to begin by addressing the young scientists, some of whom are here, but many of whom are actually watching us on live streaming. And my message to the young scientists is that you've chosen an absolutely outstanding career. We're living in an era right now where being a scientist is more exciting than ever. The types of experiments that we can do now are to understand how living organisms work are truly amazing and really, even compared to when I was a graduate student, really unimaginable. And it's really the curiosity, it's the energy, it's the passion for discovery by graduate students and postdocs that are leading to this amazing progress that we're experiencing in the life sciences today all over the world. So while the excitement of conducting science is, I think, greater than ever, paradoxically, young scientists are more anxious than ever about their futures in this profession. And thus, senior scientists need to listen to the voices of young scientists when you're expressing your anxieties when it comes to publishing your findings. And these may be the unreasonable pressures that young scientists feel about publishing in one of 3 journals, the uncertain time it takes to publish your work, the multiple cycles sometimes of editorial rejection, and the all too often demoralizing peer review comments that young scientists receive in response to what is often 4 years of their work. When I was a student, I remember looking forward to submitting a paper for publication, and I looked forward to receiving the peer review comments. And the laughter that I hear is exactly the laughter that I hear when I tell this to a group of students today. It's this sense of disbelief that publishing was ever that way. And thus, there's, I think, a growing recognition that we need to and must do better with regard to scientific publication, both to serve the mission of science overall, which is indeed what the public expects from us, and also, very importantly, to make our profession attractive to young scientists. The numbers associated with this survey that you see here need to be reversed. We need to regain the joy of communicating discovery to our colleagues and make it less arduous than it is today. And we're in this current situation not due to anyone's particular fault, but rather because we've drifted here little by little and without sufficient degree of attention being paid by our scientific community. But this now is changing, and you in the audience and online viewing are part of that change. So we are now gathered, a diverse group of individuals representing many different aspects of the scientific profession. We're practicing scientists, junior and senior. We're representatives of funding agencies. We're journal editors. We're leaders of scientific societies. But we're here today not to represent the interests of these individual organizations. We're here to act as responsible stewards of the scientific profession. We've invested our time to come here because we all want to do something good for the benefit of science overall. Is it indeed possible that we can change publishing? Many people, particularly young people, think that the system right now is gridlocked. But I take a far more optimistic view, and one that I think is also supported by recent evidence. So I'd like to say a few words about what happened in this room almost 2 years ago to the day, and many of you in the audience were here at that meeting 2 years ago. But for those of you that were not, I'm bringing it up because I also think it could foreshadow what might be outcomes of this particular meeting as well. So recognizing the long time involved in getting scientific work published, as discussed in this particular article, 4 concerned scientists, which were Jessica Polka, Daniel Colin Ramos, Harold Varmus, and myself, held a similar town hall style meeting here 2 years ago to discuss whether the use of preprints would be valuable for the life science community. And I stress at that time, we were not part of any formal organization, and we had no funding. It was really through the generosity of HHMI that we could hold this meeting here. We were just 4 concerned scientists who wanted to galvanize our community for a discussion. And we called that meeting Accelerating Science and Publication in Biology. And similarly, we gathered a diverse group of individuals for an open discussion about preprints. And that meeting was also live streamed, so anyone could view it around the world. And I should say that we're doing the same thing here at this meeting. Everything in this room will be live streamed broadcast. I also should mention that there are a couple journalists who are here for this meeting as well. So prior to that meeting, I would say that many people were dismissive of preprints, that preprints would never come to biology, citing that the life science culture is fundamentally different from physics, where preprints flourish, or saying that preprints were tried, but they never took off. Prior to that meeting, we developed a website to develop awareness of preprints, which few biologists heard of, And at the meeting itself, we asked a lot of difficult questions to the attendees, whether preprints should be considered priority of discovery and cited properly, whether funding agencies should recognize preprints as evidence of productivity, and whether journals should allow preprints prior to publication. The meeting was unexpectedly positive in all accords, as assessed by voting from the attendees, indeed, as we're going to do tomorrow. And different stakeholders felt compelled to write a report of their assessments, Jeremy Berg being the lead author here. Alphabetic, I should say. It was all a cooperative effort through Google Docs, actually, where the funder group, journal group, and academic group wrote their own perspective of what they heard at the meeting and what they thought about preprints. But more importantly than the meeting itself was the actions that followed after the meeting. So first of all, biologists responded with an increasing submission of preprints, most of them being submitted to the preprint server bioRxiv, which is sponsored by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories. But in addition to that, not only do we have the meeting, but there were a number of action items that happened. Funding agencies began to develop pro-preprint policies. Journals changed their preprint stances and developed formal policies as well. Crossref indexed preprints, and other funding agencies joined in and developed pro-preprint policies, including the NIH, and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative funded bioRxiv. But I think what's not shown in this curve is, and also much more difficult to quantitate, is the increase in optimism in our community overall, that, that positive actions can happen in publishing, and that this effort created a can-do attitude, and also created a community of involved individuals to make this happen. And even at a personal level, and anecdotal, I must admit, but I was just reviewing grants for an HHMI competition. These are junior or mid-career investigators applying for HHMI investigator funding. And 6 of the 6 applicants that I reviewed cited preprints in their recent evidence of productivity. And that came home to roost that things are indeed changing in biology. So while preprints are making considerable progress, we all appreciate they're not the complete answer to publishing. And so in this meeting, we are tackling the topic of peer review. In many ways, the challenge is very different from the last meeting. Most biologists were unfamiliar with preprints 2 years ago. Well, I would say all of us in this room have firsthand experience with peer review. We, meaning the organizers ASAP Bio, Wellcome Trust, HHMI, felt that the time is right, though, for this open discussion of peer review. There's a strong feeling in our community that peer review has enormous value, but there's also a feeling of dissatisfaction in its current execution. So this meeting puts questions to our community. Can we do better? Can we steer the ship in the right direction and in a responsible way, allowing peer review to better serve its mission of quality control and improving scientific work? And we've posed this meeting in advance, and we've actually asked many people to write what they think about future ideas for peer review. Many of these can be found, if you haven't looked, on the ASAP Bio website under peer review. And many of you in this room have actually responded with, I would say, tremendously interesting ideas and commentaries on peer review, which are here, but I really encourage people who are listening online or in this audience to read them because they're really outstanding. Now let me talk to you about the structure of this meeting. So tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about transparency and recognition in peer review. And one of the big questions we're going to pose is, should peer review become more transparent? In a survey, which is also available on the ASAP Bio website, we did pose the question whether the reports of peer reviewing, not necessarily the identity, but the peer reviews themselves, should be made publicly available. And in this response, there was a clear feeling from the community that they should. And I think a similar poll by Tony Ross Helliler also came up with similar poll statistics. Yet only 2.2% of life science journals currently make their peer review reports accessible. We're also going to discuss whether there should be transparency in who actually is reviewing. Should students and postdocs be also identified as part of the reviewing system to the editor? And I think, again, this is an important question for our community. There's a feeling, at least from this poll, that that should be, but I think this is something that we'll discuss tomorrow more openly. And, you know, I think there are many things about the junior scientist involvement that we really need to take into consideration. This is a poll done by eLife over here, which asked the question of junior reviewers whether their supervisors were involved in peer review. And the predominant response was not at all. So I think there is something that we need to think about how we as senior investigators and junior scientists, yes? I did not do this poll, but that's what my understanding is from the eLife poll. Mark? We'll come back to that, but I read that poll carefully, and that is what it was. It was a poll to students, postdocs, and a few junior faculty. Yeah. Well, yeah.
The question was, how do you review reports? That's the question.
Yeah.
If so, to what extent was your supervisor to review the reports?
Right.
So it's a follow-up.
Yeah, so that. The student. Correct. Yeah, that is, yes, that is correct.
And these are not cases where the supervisor was asked to review and then handed it over to the student. That's what we're talking about.
Well, I didn't mean to derail this into a giant discussion. The general point is, like, tomorrow morning, we're going to discuss these issues of transparency and how we can, you know, increase transparency in the system. We're also going to discuss the issue about whether peer review should be recognized, whether this should be seen as a service to the community, and how the community would actually try to implement recognized peer review. And I think it's also worth talking about whether we're doing the best job as we can in training for peer review. Again, this is from the survey when researchers were asked if they're adequately trained in how to perform peer review, and the minority felt that they would agree with that particular statement. So Thursday afternoon, we'll also discuss what experiments could be tried in peer review. Again, I think that's going to be a very exciting discussion. And Friday morning, we are going to have the opportunity to break out into individual sessions to discuss various ideas that people are interested in, and it's still possible to sign up for particular sessions on the ASAP Bio website if you like. So I was trying to think about how to end this particular talk, and I went back and I actually looked at my closing remarks from the first meeting that was held 2 years ago, and it just struck me that those remarks seemed equally applicable today as they did 2 years ago. So I'm just going to read them to you again because I think maybe they're still worth mentioning. So many people on the internet are watching to see what we do and how we behave. I think they're desperately hoping to see some sort of success. Can we, different constituents of the scientific enterprise, come together in a room and work together for the common good? Or are we going to be fragmented and driven by personal interests? Are we going to be whining about problems and casting blame? Or are we going to be focused on realistic solutions and looking for opportunities to work together? Can we listen to one another and find ways to compromise? Or are we going to be locked into ideas that we carry with us into this room? Can we work in transparent ways with the community as we are attempting using live streaming and Twitter instead of working behind closed doors? Is it even possible for us to make real progress on an issue where the community seems stalemate? I'm optimistic here, but I appreciate the challenges posed by this type of meeting. However, if we succeed, even in partial measure, it will send a positive signal to our community that this type of meeting and interaction can be successful with other topics that we need to address in the scientific profession, including follow-up meetings on publication issues that we will not address here today. The task is in front of us not to solve everything, but to work together well and potentially take positive and sufficiently visible steps forward. Indeed, history will look back and assess whether we rose to the challenge that is put in front of us in these next 2 days. And I also closed, at the last meeting, I walked before the meeting around the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. And I read one of his quotes on the back of the memorial, and it just seemed very appropriate, again, to what we're trying to do, in the spirit of what we're trying to do here today. And again, I thought I'd read it to you. From Thomas Jefferson. I am certainly not an advocate for frequent and untried changes in laws and constitutions. I think moderate imperfections had better be borne with, because once known, we can accommodate ourselves to them and find practical means of correcting their ill effects. But I also know that laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths disclosed, and manners and opinions change with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also and keep pace with the times. So with that, I welcome you to this meeting. We have a lot of good work to do together, and it's time to get on with it. So with that,